As entrepreneurs, we all have a reason why we chose to leave our 9 to 5 for an 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. I'm here to capture those stories of why we all hustle and grind for our companies. Matt started CapForge back in 2000 after being laid off from a venture-backed firm as part of the dotcom bust. In 2012, bookkeeping became the focus of CapForge, with more services added each year, including tax prep, payroll, advisory services, due diligence, and business exit. He continues to work on growing the business while the team runs the day-to-day operations and continues to ensure CapForge always provides 5-star quality and service to our clients. CapForge's office is located in Carlsbad, California, but has over 80 employees and growing, and clients from all 50 states. Matt, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate you being here because you're in this space that I really have this passion for. When I started in my business years ago, fortunately, I had people around me to guide me through the wonderful world of taxes. And I've said this quote before to people where Learned Hand once said, there's a tax code for the informed and a tax code for the uninformed, and both are legal. And so I want to know, if the system's rigged, I want to know how it's rigged and how I can take advantage. So I really appreciate what you guys do. And we'll get into it here in a second. But first, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate you, man.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on. I'm glad to be here, and hopefully we can share some wisdom and some cheat codes on the tax system that people can take advantage of. Because I definitely don't disagree with that quote. That is spot on.
Absolutely. It's funny, like all of the different like parts and pieces and why Bill Gates has a foundation and how they use it. And it's just, it's a whole nother world, and we're not taught that. And that's what your company does, CapForge. So they heard in the introduction, like what your company does, but I always love to hear entrepreneurs explain their own companies because we all have a passion for it. Explain kind of high level, what do you do and what was the vision for your company?
Yeah, so I am atypical for an accountant because I did not start in accounting. I didn't go to school for accounting. It was not my background. I do have an MBA. I had some accounting classes, but really I came to accounting from an entrepreneurial perspective. Prior to doing what I do now, I was working with a lot of small business owners, helping them sell their businesses as a business broker. And I would consistently see that that was one of the big weak spots for these business owners. They just did not have their books together. They didn't understand their numbers, and they didn't understand what they were losing out on by not having a better handle on this. So our goal is to be a bookkeeping and tax firm, but one that is much more in line with how small business owners work, how they think, the questions they have, the pain points they have, more so than just the typical accounting firm that will, once a year hand you, here's your tax bill, pay that, or here's your P&L, we've completed your books for the month, or everything's reconciled, it's done. But the business owner goes, I'm not even looking at that. I don't really know what to make of that. I don't know how to use it to help me make better decisions. So we're trying to really bridge the gap between, you definitely need and benefit from having good accounting, but there's a whole nother piece where we help educate you and explain it to you and help you make good use of it to achieve whatever goals you'd like to set out to achieve. And I think that's the big differentiation for us, is just coming from an entrepreneur and business owner mindset versus the strictly accounting mindset. And it's funny to me because so often I'll have a conversation with a potential client and we'll talk business and we'll talk big picture issues and we'll talk the challenges they have and we'll commiserate as entrepreneurs on all the things. And then at the 45-minute mark, I'll finally say, hey, we probably really should circle around to the bookkeeping accounting question that you had originally called about. Sorry for getting so off topic. And they're like, no, look, you're hired. I don't even need to hear anything else. You obviously get what I'm about more so than any other accounting person I've ever talked to by a huge margin. And I go, oh, great. Well, okay. Would love to help you with the accounting too. But that's the difference, because you get on the call with a regular accounting person, they're talking debits and credits and tax code and IRS, and business owners go, I don't know. Can you help save me money? Can you, cut to the bottom line. So that's the difference with us.
Well, because I think as entrepreneurs, we hate accounting. I've got a business degree too. I hate accounting. Because I don't like doing it. It's not that sexy new shiny thing. It's nothing that I see, like in my vision as a visionary, it's nothing that I see that moves me forward, even though logically, I know in the back of my head that it really has a massive impact on my company. I don't want to. There's better things I can do. There's better ways I can there's better ways I can serve my company. And so that's why I think, coming in with not just a bookkeeper, but a bookkeeper who is also willing to come in and say, okay, let's take a look at some long-term planning. Let's take a look at some things that we have, for the future. And I mean, that's, I know there's a friend of mine who does business consulting who says the very first thing, I will not work with somebody who doesn't at least have a bookkeeper. And if they don't, that's the first thing we do. It's somebody in your world to be able to just keep tabs on things. I know I had a bookkeeper who really helped out with like my chart of accounts. It was all jacked up and not quite the way it should have been. And just a few hours of work, and he made my life a lot easier. So I get it.
Right.
It's a really critical thing that we don't usually think about, but it has a massive impact.
Definitely. And I always tell people, like, I get it. Bookkeeping and accounting is not sexy, but profits are sexy
Oh yeah.
and they go together. Right? So we'll do the unsexy part to get to the sexy part, and you'll appreciate it when you see how much benefit we can have for that part that you do care about. And I get it. Nobody's going to be excited about bookkeeping. That's fine. We'll do that part, but you're going to be excited about the outcome and the results that you can see from having it done right, and working with somebody who gets the bigger picture.
Yeah. And you were talking about those, 45 minutes into the conversation, we're like, okay, let's circle back to the question you had that absolutely resonated with me, because some of my meetings devolve into that, because we're so passionate about what we do. And one of the things I find about entrepreneurs, there's a few commonalities amongst us. And one of them is, if you've known us for long enough, you will hate us talking about our topic because we do it so often that it's dull. Your eyes start to roll and your mind starts to wander because we're just so passionate about it. So I have been in those conversations. I get it. I actually like those conversations.
Me too. Right. I consider myself a business nerd. When I get to talk to somebody who's got a business that I haven't seen before or don't know anything about, I've always been curious. My eyes light up. Oh, really? Tell me how does this work? And how do you do that? And how does this, we're doing a project right now with a company that has a bunch of those car trailers, right? The kind of, you see the truck that pulls the trailer that has like 8 cars or 10 cars on it or whatever.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, you see it on the road, you never give it a second thought, but we're doing a project with one of these companies, and I looked at his numbers and I was like, oh my God, I had no idea these things. You can make that much money driving cars from one spot to and getting, how much do you pay the drivers? How much is the car? How long did it last? I mean, and I'm all about it. And they're like, oh my God, finally somebody wants to talk to me, because my spouse never wants to hear about it again. My friends don't care. The other people in the industry, obviously we're not going to share numbers with each other. So finally somebody who cares and wants to hear about it, ask questions. They're like, oh my God, this is amazing. And I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. So, you just got to find that right connection, and it really is fun.
Yeah, like some friends of mine flip forklifts, and it's something you never would have thought about. And this is an entrepreneurial move. I mean, I'm going to buy, there's a company that you buy this forklift, the company renovates it, sells it, you share in the profits. And anywhere between 10 to 30% is what they're getting back again. And it's like, what? But it's such an entrepreneurial move, is because we're always out there trying to solve a problem.
Yes.
I have one friend of mine, we walked into this massive, like 60,000 square foot warehouse. And there's a joke with another friend of mine, Joe, where he buys so many of these things. I'm like, so all of those are yours, right? Because he just buys them as quickly as they're on the market, because it's such a good return on it. So I love to nerd out to stuff like that. It was one of those things, like most people on an afternoon, Saturday afternoon, are going out and, doing their thing. They might be going to an event. They might be, sitting in their backyard chatting. I'm checking out forklifts, and I'm proud of it.
It's the mindset that you have as an entrepreneur. You're always looking at, well, how does that work, and what's the opportunity, and how much? Yeah, and I always joke, like, I'll be in the back of the ambulance on the way on my last day on Earth, and I'll be thinking, oh, ambulance businesses, I wonder how these work. I'll be, as I'm laying in the bed and they're intubating me and stuff, and I'll be like, oh, I wonder what the margin is in ambulance.
Gee,
that's
gauze
just the
looks
way
like
my
be
brain
improved.
goes.
Yeah.
I can't help it.
But I think, as entrepreneurs, and especially, we were talking about this earlier, where the problem I think we run into is that our transition, we have this transition, and so we get out of our standard 9 to 5 world and we get into the entrepreneurial world, which personally, in my humble opinion, I think is a hell of a lot more interesting. But we're finally in the lane that our brain needs to be in, and things are finally making sense. And we love to see what new people are creating, and what people are creating, what new things we're going to get into. And I think for a lot of people, it becomes problematic, because now Like you said, this person, his wife didn't really understand what it and didn't want to hear about it. It wasn't her passion. And, it's not a bad thing. It's a different way of thinking. Getting around a bunch of entrepreneurs and getting a hive mind going on is a magical experience. But, especially, being able to help them out with taxes and having bought businesses and various stuff like that. You've seen this a lot in your career where you can get that, that hive mind going on,
Mhm.
and all the cool stuff we can get into.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. I think there's nothing more empowering than being around other people who are saying, yes, this could work. Yes, this sounds like a good opportunity. Here's a couple things to watch out for, but
Mhm.
it's encouraging. Whereas, talking to people who only have ever had kind of a W-2 job their whole life,
Mhm.
they go, that's risky. Well, don't you get a paycheck on Friday? What if you don't? What happens? What about
Mhm.
that? And it's all negative and don't and risky. I'm with you. I think, entrepreneurship is the best thing since sliced bread. And I could never go back. And I appreciate that, there's plenty of people with no interest in it and just, happy with the jobs they do and they put in hard work and everything else. But it's just, if you're going this direction, I think it's best to surround yourselves with other people who understand it and can give you good feedback and not just sort of that fear based, don't
Mhm.
do it. It's too risky. What happens if this? What happens if that? Because, that will get in your head and could hold you back from being what you really were meant to be.
Yeah. I didn't start my company until I was in my late 30s, and it was for the same reason as I was very well programmed with the 9 to 5 world with the best of intentions. I want to make it clear this was with good intentions. I was that entrepreneurial kid. My parents did not understand what the hell they had no idea what to do with me. But same thing. We really in that fear based. So talking about entrepreneurial journey, I do want to talk about how you were laid off from a venture capital or venture backed firm in
Mhm.
2000 due to the dot-com bubble, and then you transitioned eventually into bookkeeping. It was about 12 years later. But what was that transition like? Like, let's talk about the layoff first, because I think a lot of people were laid off at this point.
Yeah, no, so I graduated the MBA program in May of 2000 and immediately got a job at a firm that was doing consulting for a lot of small businesses. They were helping set up IT, they were doing, various legal things. And then they were also the division I worked in. We were helping people write business plans, do financial projections with the idea of getting venture capital and or debt financing to kind of launch in. And I loved it. It was fun. I got to talk to entrepreneurs every day. I got to help them do, writing their business plan and thinking about market strategies and everything else. But the reality was the firm that I worked at, they put .com on the end of their name, like so many firms did at that time. They had no business being venture backed. They were never going to be a 100x company or anything like it. So they burned through the VC money and then, had a big round of layoffs, which included me.
Mhm.
um, but I realized, like, we're trying to charge these startups, $20,000, $25,000 to write a business plan and do financial projections. And there's still a lot of them out there that need it. But I bet if I just did it on my own, I could charge 5,000 or 7,500 or 10 grand. And that would be great for me,
Mhm.
much more affordable for them. And, this might be the way I finally get into my own business, which I'd been thinking about for, you know, 15 years since I was a teenager, but never really could figure out the path. So I
Mhm.
thought I'll try this for a month. And if it works, great. And if not, then I guess I'll go get a job. 24 years later, I have yet to get a job. So it worked out. But I mean, it's been a long journey with a lot of different, avenues. So I started out doing that consulting, but what I figured out with consulting was it's a one at a time. You get a project, you're busy, you're not marketing, you're not getting more projects, then that project ends and now you've got nothing till you land the next. So it was episodic and not, I didn't feel super comfortable. So I got into some other projects and doing some other things that was more of a recurring revenue or more of a hands-off sort of, passive income kind of things. And I tried this or that, and some things worked and some things didn't. And then a restaurant came up for sale that I had had a lot of experience in running restaurants, being a restaurant manager prior to even getting my MBA. So I thought, oh, maybe the way I diversify my income is I buy this restaurant. I'll still do have time to do the consulting and other stuff, but I'll have another revenue stream, which seemed like, a good way to hedge my bets and be safe, which worked out well. I ran that for 4 years. I grew the revenue, I grew the profitability. And then I decided, that's enough of that. Restaurants are no walk in the park. So I sold it, myself. I found buyers, I helped them, get financing, and they bought it from me, and that worked out. And I thought, okay, maybe I should be an acquisition entrepreneur, and I will buy instead of build more businesses. And so I got my business broker license, and I worked at that for 4 years. I sold 36 businesses. I never found one I wanted to buy. I always say, this one's good, but I don't like this. But this one's good, but I don't like that. So I did that. And that was where I really saw the huge deficit in small business bookkeeping and accounting, how so many of the business owners I talked to just did not have a handle on that. And the level of providers, the service that they were trying to hire to do these things just was not nearly as good as it could, especially for me coming out of the restaurant industry, where customer service is, a key part of what makes you successful or not. And I could just see in the accounting world, customer service was like number 14th on the list of things they cared about doing well. So I'm like, if I come in with good customer service and good, professional accounting at a price that makes sense, we're going to clean up. And so from starting in 2012 out of my spare bedroom to today in 2024, I now have 80 employees. We have clients across the country. We've really done well just using that simple model of good service and good customer service in a space that doesn't, is not well known for either of those things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, it really has worked out. But it's just, if you had asked me in 2000, where are you going to end up? Where are you going to be in 25 years? Owner of an accounting firm wouldn't have even made the top 100 of my list. But it's just the way it all kind of came together. So I think, again, as an entrepreneur, you're always keeping your eye on, what's the best opportunity for me? What's a good fit with my skills, my interest, my passion, and how do I fill that? And if that's your mindset, you'll never be poor and you'll never be out of work. You might be poorer and richer at different times as things ebb and flow, but you'll never, lack for things to do. And you'll always be able to kind of move forward as long as you keep getting up every time, life throws you a curveball or something stops working or something that you thought was going to happen doesn't happen. Just go, okay, that's just a Monday. I'm just going to keep going. And, as long as you never quit, you'll never fail.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is the only way you can fail, is to quit. And that's one of the things that I really respect a lot about entrepreneurs. I talk a lot about them because I just have this deep respect on a lot of different levels. But part of it is just there's a level of tenacity and resiliency in the entrepreneurial world that is difficult for people that aren't in the entrepreneur space to be able to understand. Like just consistently being kicked in the gut, standing up and going, I'm not done yet. Sometimes you're working on pure chutzpah, just pure ego, because nothing's
Absolutely.
going right. You're in the massive, the middle of this massive dumpster fire, sitting on a train wreck. You just do, right?
That's what keeps, and that's what differentiates, because a lot of people would just say, what the hell, I'm done. I'm not going back. I'm just going to go safe play, get a job or do whatever. But entrepreneurs, we're just glutton for punishment. I guess we just keep walking into the machine gun fire until, we get there. I just think of an example, the Adam, I forget his name, from WeWork, right? You couldn't have had a more public flame out disaster than he had. And whether you believe his business model is good or not, whatever, within 12 months, the guy was back with something else and had raised another $1 billion and was on to the next thing. And you just think, man, if that guy can get up in the morning, look himself in the mirror and say, yeah, I'm not done yet. My losing a customer or having a bad day, or what excuse could I possibly come up with, right? If that guy can get up and keep going.
Yep.
I wasn't on the cover of Time magazine saying, biggest failure of 2022 or whatever it was, so what's my excuse? Why am I not still soldiering on? So.
Yeah. Well, like you were just telling earlier, I have a story about somebody I know who was in a business with Richard Branson that failed miserably, and this was in the high 8 figures, and within a week lost the company. And it's just, you of course have a reaction to it. You don't lose a company that, after years of work and not have some reaction. But then I think it was months, and he was back at it. Go, let's do this, figure this out again. And it's been very successful since. And so, yeah, it's a different roller coaster. It's a very different roller coaster. I think it's a hell of a lot more fun. I wouldn't have it any other way, just like you. I know now that with the level of resiliency that I have, and I think any entrepreneur has, no matter what happens, short of like massive nuclear holocaust, I don't think any of us have a chance to deal with that. But
Right. Yeah,
almost anything that could happen, we will figure out a way out of it. And I think that's a freedom that
absolutely.
people can't get in a 9 to 5.
No, I 100% agree. And I think even, I always joke too, yeah, if, something major happens, the grocery store closes, I'm good for about 48 hours and then that's it. I'm out. But, you
Yep.
know, realistically, yeah, I mean, even in that event, you're like, well, what can I do? Maybe I can,
Well, we're gonna go into our cupboard to like sell all
trade.
the stuff we have and figure it
Yeah, I'll
out.
figure there's some arbitrage play here. I can make this work. So
you know, I've heard of folks who are really, really good entrepreneurs having garage sales because it's like, okay, let's liquidate some stuff, let's arbitrage some stuff, get rid of it, be done. I've got a few things listed on eBay right now. It's just like let's just, let's just figure out how to make this work. Let's do with
yeah,
this.
yeah.
Yeah. So now your company does, of course, tax prep, the things that we think about, but I think there's two parts that I really want to focus on because I think it's something as entrepreneurs we don't think about, and that's due diligence and business exits,
Hmm.
especially if you're in well, actually, especially if you're a partnership. Story from over the weekend, I found out what a shotgun clause was, where it's basically say that, let's say, Matt, you and I are in a business and the business is valued at 5 million. You go through and you come to me and say, I'm going to buy you out for $100,000. And I say, hell no. Now I buy you out for $100,000 with a shotgun clause. I think I thought it was brilliant when it was brought to me. But we don't think about stuff like that. We don't think about how to exit a business. We just want to go create cool stuff with other people. Talk to me a little bit more about kind of what your company does with due diligence and like exiting and fun stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the fundamental conversations we have with a lot of our clients is, one, what is your kind of goal? And two, have you thought about, and if you haven't, let's
Mhm.
talk about what you could actually do with this business besides just operate it on a day-to-day basis. Because one of the beautiful things about entrepreneurship is that you're not just building a business that pays you money,
Mhm.
today. You're actually building an asset that you could sell at a certain point for another additional infusion of capital, right? If
Mhm.
I've got a W-2 job, right? If I quit on Friday, A, they stop paying me, but B,
Mhm.
I can't sell my job to
Yeah.
somebody else. But
Yep.
if I own a business that has customers and produces cash flow, produces a product or service that people want to buy, I not only make money from that, but I also have an asset that now I can sell for a
Mhm.
good amount. And the amount that you can sell for is very much determined by how well you run it and how well you document what the value is and what you're bringing on in, and how much, cash flow is left for you at the end of the day as the owner. So we go through with our clients and talk about that. Look, maybe you didn't realize even, but this business that you're making $200,000 a year from, you could probably sell it for 600,000. But here's the things you've got to do to set it up so that you can exit for that amount. And
Mhm.
or you could pass it on to heirs, or you could do other things with it. But an exit where you sell and have a liquidity event is the most common way that people can get out of their business with an additional economic benefit. So we kind of talk about how that can work, what their business could be worth. And if you don't like that $600,000, you want it to be a million or 2 million. All right, well, let's talk about what does it need to get, to, so that you could sell it for a million or 2 million. And now we've got a target. Now we've got a goal to reach. And now we can sort of measure the steps on the way to get there. And you can see, okay, I need X number of customers. I need to maintain my margins at this and my profit at that. And all of a sudden now I'm on a pathway to a $2 million exit, or whatever
Mhm.
your number is, 10 million, 100 million, whatever it is. So we work with a lot to understand that intrinsic value in their business and how they can best access it, or what it would look like to do that. And then on the flip side, we do work with other people as well who, like I was, looking for a business to buy. Okay, I found this, great HVAC business. The owners had it for 30 years. They're looking to retire. This thing makes $750,000 a year in profit for the owner. But I want to check it out and make sure that's really the real number. And that if I took it over as a new owner, what's it going to look like for me if I acquire it with debt? I use an SBA loan or something. After loan payments, how much is going to be left, and what else? Is there anything else, any red flags or anything else that's going to catch me out if I'm not aware of it? So we do that investigation, that due diligence process, to help them understand what they're buying, the opportunity, risks, rewards, et cetera. And there's a lot of entrepreneurs. It seems like been a trend the last few years, because a lot of these baby boomers with these, profitable, well-run businesses are looking to retire and pass the business on. And they're still all old school. They're keeping things in handwritten ledgers, and they're dispatching people with cell phones and stuff instead of using some of the apps and new technology. And there's a lot of younger people looking to acquire these businesses, turn them much more tech forward, grow them, put marketing in place that's never been there before, and turn a business that does a solid 2 or 3 million a year into a business that does 10 or 15 million a year. And so it's an exciting time to be an entrepreneur. So we're working with people on both sides, helping people exit for maximum value and helping people acquire businesses, understanding what they're getting into and then helping them run it from there.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing we think about is our business is our baby. Our business is very closely tied to our identity, and I think we think we're not going to ever exit the business, but I think it's a good question to have. And there's been a couple of businesses I've been part of, like a couple right now currently that I've been part of that we are planning to exit. I mean, it's going to happen in the next 5 years. It's just this is the end goal that we have, is to cash out, for a large amount and then go from there. So, thinking about business exits and what would happen if your God forbid something terrible happened to your family, you needed to cash out, or what would happen if the market changed and now you need to pivot and you need to liquidate this asset. And I think that's why I wanted to bring it up, is it's something I think is very, very necessary to think about, even though we don't want to think about it, just like bookkeeping. It is a good thing to understand this is an asset and we can leverage it. So
yeah, and I mean, I think it's always good to know, just like it's much easier, obviously, to go and figure out exactly, if you wanted to sell your house today, you can go on Zillow or whatever, kind of figure out at least pretty close what it would be worth. And, obviously every house is a little different, but I think that's a great thing to know about your business too, because even if, you thought you're going to run it for the next 30 years, but really maybe 5 years down the road, some other opportunity comes up, or you just decide, I'm just not as passionate about it as I was. Knowing what you could sell it for, how could you exit it all? And if you could, how much could you get? And is there a way to keep that sort of optimized and get the most for it? It just gives you more flexibility and more options. And, yes, maybe today you're not thinking about it, but having it in the back of your mind, knowing what you could sell for, and being in a position where if I wanted to turn around and sell it quickly, I wouldn't have to do, okay, 6 months of catching up the books and filing old tax returns, getting rid of old inventory and all that stuff. Always being in a position where you could make a change, I think just gives you more flexibility and even more of that freedom to be able to say, you know what, I'm done with this stage of my life. I want to move on to, I want to have a trucking business that drives cars around, or I want to flip forklifts, or
Yep.
any other crazy business idea that comes to mind, or you're just ready to do it. I think it's beneficial to the entrepreneur to understand the intrinsic value of their business and how to access it if and when that becomes something they want to do.
Yeah. And to keep it as one of the tools in your toolbox, just in case. Yeah. So as we're coming to the end of the podcast, I do have one question I ask everyone, and that is, what is one book or podcast that has had a significant impact on your life?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a very oldie but goodie. I'm sure it's come up before in this question, but years and years ago, I read the E-Myth, the Michael Gerber book on putting systems and processes in place in your business. And this was something having worked in restaurants that were well run and had systems, it was something I was aware of, but it really just reiterated the fact that you're doing yourself a disservice if the way your business runs is that every single thing goes through you, right? If there's no way to delegate, there's no systems in place, every day is a fire drill of figuring out, what are we going to do today? What problems we have to do? What fires we have to put out? Because the problem with that approach is you're not ever in growth mode. You're not thinking forward strategically, how can I improve my business, add services, add, revenue streams, continue to growth. You're just kind of like, oh my God, this customer called angry, or this, vendor said they canceled the order, or whatever. You're always in fire drill mode. So that book really highlights how you can set your business up to be able to think into the future and grow strategically, and not just be in that fire drill mode day after day after day. And that's, I think, some of the reason people decide to sell after 5 years. When I hear somebody say, I've been running my business for 5 years, I've never taken a vacation day, I don't think, wow, what a hard worker. I think you screwed up.
Yep. You're not doing something right.
You're not doing it right. Because yes, it is hard work. And yes, there are plenty of hours to put in, but you should be able to step away from the business from time to time, take a mental health break, take a work-life balance break, and not have the business fall apart. And if the business is literally always hanging by a thread and that thread is attached to you, you've got work to do in fixing that situation. And that E-Myth book is a great introduction to how some of that can happen for you. So I recommend people who haven't checked it out. I mean, you can get it at the library. There's a billion copies of it. You probably get it on Amazon used for $1, but
Yeah.
read it, think about it, start to implement it. That would be my number one suggestion to any, starting entrepreneur or smaller entrepreneur. That really is a game changer.
Yeah. So I know that I'm never actually going to like have a complete day off. Just that's who I am. And I kind of know where it is. It's not like it's not toxic. It's just more, I'm so deeply ingrained in my company and I love what I do. So it's a little bit different. I call them staff development days though. So there's some days where you sort of back off and go into visionary mode. And I notice if I don't get those on a regular basis, at least once a week, if I don't get it, I am miserable because I'm really in that mode and I'm micromanaging. I'm doing all this stuff. For me, having that one staff development day, just got to step back and do all the really cool stuff and get back into my zone again helps out exponentially. So,
Absolutely. And I mean, I can't, I still check my email even when,
yep.
I mean, we just recently took a family trip to Japan. I didn't put an out of office message. I still
Uh-huh.
check just to make sure that, but it's 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the evening. And while I'm gone, things still happen. We still bring in new customers. We still bill, we still produce, we still handle complaints. And that's where I want to be. I don't need to be off on a mountain, out of touch for 30 days to feel like but I want to know that, it's not just me. And I feel like at the size we're at, it shouldn't just be me, because if something
Mhm.
did happen to me, I don't want to feel like, well, now 80 people are out of a job, right?
Yeah.
That's a lot of responsibility. So
Yeah.
I want to have systems in place. I want to have a management team that lets me not be the single point of failure across all functions of the business.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, Matt, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun talking to you.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. It is a great conversation. It's always good to talk to entrepreneurs and, hear their stories and what they're up to, how they got there. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks. Thanks again for joining us on the Hustle and Grind podcast. If you'd like to learn more about Matt, check out the links in the description.